What if the secret to success wasn't just talent or hard work, but unshakable confidence? Welcome to Grasp Confidence, the podcast where visionary thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs unlock the mindset and strategies for lasting success. I'm your host, Tara LaFawn Gooch, CEO, two-time best-selling author, and international TEDx speaker, and I can't wait to help you step into the most powerful version of yourself. Let's dive in. Today's guest knows firsthand that healing is not a journey, it's a declaration of worth. I'm honored to welcome Danielle Bernock, an international award-winning author, trauma-informed coach, and powerful voice of healing through faith. Known as the lady on the internet who loves you. I love that, by the way. That is so cool. Danielle has made it her mission to help individuals embrace their God-given value, heal from emotional trauma, and live loved. With books like Emerging with Wings and Because You Matter, Danielle shares and equips others to break free from invisible wounds, reclaim their identity, and walk confidently in their purpose. If you've ever struggled feeling unseen, unloved, or unworthy, this episode will speak directly to your heart and soul. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I love how you said that healing is a declaration. I've never had anyone say it like that. I love that.
It's true, right? And this love that we feel inside of ourselves, it's a declaration. It's interesting to think about, but I'm glad that resonated with you. So, I want to get into your story. I want to get into a lot of things because this didn't happen by chance. I know that much. Right? Nobody steps into what you're doing on accident.
Right.
As we'll talk about your story. But first, I want to hear about what you're doing right now. I look at your website, which is awesome, by the way. You've got a lot of really cool books that you've got. You're an author after my own heart. You're also a speaker, thought leader. We're doing a lot of the same things, but in different ways. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now.
What I'm doing right now is I am aiming to get into small businesses to serve and educate the staff with my workshops. I have a process called SELF that God gave me, and I'm going to take it in there. I've done them organizations and in other businesses, but I'm looking to do more of that because I just love speaking. It's just something I enjoy, which is hilarious because I used to be terrified of it. So I love doing that. I'm coaching. I do coaching both one-on-one and one-on-two, which means it's like generally a mother-daughter or something like that. And so I work with the three of them together doing that. And I have a book I'm playing with, but I haven't quite got it yet. So I've been playing with it for a while. We'll see if it actually turns into one, but I have 5. So.
Wow, that's enough, right? But I think I'll always be writing as well. There was nobody in my family that was an author. I didn't know any friends at one point in time that were authors. And then I just started writing and then boom, here we are. And now you can't get me to stop, right? It's like, oh my, are you crazy? Right? Because it's a never ending marketing machine for a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've got 5 books, speaking on stage, working with small businesses, working with even ones or twos, pairs of people to help them elevate their life, lead with love, self-love. Wonder, take us back because right now I'm looking at you. I love the hair, right? I love everything about your brand, your look, this vision, mission you have. But I would just wager to guess it wasn't always this way. There has to be some kind of story, right, behind all of this. So I would love for you to take us back to a time when things were a little different for you.
How far back?
As far back as you want to go.
Well, I'm a childhood trauma survivor. So to go all the way back to my childhood, I grew up feeling unloved and unwanted. I suffered from multiple kinds of childhood trauma and from something called childhood emotional neglect. But I didn't know I was suffering from that. I was just growing up, which is often the case. Many people don't know that they have trauma. They know something's not going right in their life, which is how my counselor identified the childhood emotional neglect in my life. I think it's hilarious. I was telling her something and she stopped me because I was talking about it like it was no big deal, which is frequently the thing when someone doesn't recognize trauma in their life. They're like, oh, blah, 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 no big deal. She went, wait, 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 wait. And then she said, something went terribly wrong. I went, what? And she proceeded to unpack how things were supposed to be in a healthy growing up and emotional wellness life. And my mouth dropped open. I was in shock that that was a thing. I didn't know that was a possibility. Hey,
Wow.
so often that's why my mission for 4F Media is exposing the truth about emotional trauma because people don't understand what it is. So at one time, I was an emotional basket case. My emotions were all over the place. I didn't know what I was feeling, didn't know how to recognize it, didn't know how to control it. I was just at the mercy of how I felt and then the shame and condemnation that followed afterwards. And I lived that way for a very long time. In my first book, Emerging with Wings, I actually tell the story of how I got free from that and found my value because I felt like I was worthless. But it's written like a love story. So it takes you on a journey with a hero, a villain, and a person overcoming and emerges happy. At the end, it's not some graphic thing that you wish you didn't read. I've read some books like that and you just can't unread it. And it's no, my book's not like that. My book's entertaining, it's funny, and it's inspiring. But it was through that journey of writing that book that I have come to do what I do now. Because I sat down one day, I felt like writing a book, and then I forgot, and maybe you write a book, and then no, and then suddenly there was this one day I still remember. It was September 29th to 2012 when I sat down and started to write the book. I had no idea how to write like you had shared with me. I didn't know anybody who was an author. I didn't know anything about anything except for I have this story to tell. So I hired a counselor, took a couple to get a good one, and started writing the book. And she unpacked the second half of that book. I thought I was healed of all the trauma. I had kicked and screamed and fought and clawed trying to find resources because back then there wasn't anything like what there is available now. So I worked really hard to heal, thought I was all done. Ta-da, not even close. And she unpacked it. My book's 16 chapters. The second 8 she unpacked. So writing that book and then going to publish it, and I looked into traditional publishing and decided against that because they would buy my story and then they could change my story. I'd worked too hard on my story. Nobody's owning my story but me. So then it's like, well, how do you self-publish? So more education, more learning of how to do that. Went through the process, and I still remember pushing the button to release it to the world. And it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because I had just learned the second half of this book in the last couple of months. And I'm going to tell the whole world this? What are you, out of your mind, Danielle? But I put it out there, and the response is what's led me to what I do now. I mean, I wanted to help people, yes. And even though my greatest fear was that someone would actually read it, I did want them to read it because I wanted to help people, but it helped people much more than I expected in a far deeper level. And there's a quote in that book that's even gone viral, which astounded me, but was my epiphany in the book. So it makes sense like that, because people with trauma, they will diminish it and say it's not trauma or think it was just them or it's all their fault or, oh, this big, huge thing, that's trauma. What I'm going through, that's not really trauma. But trauma is personal. Two people can go through the same thing and come through it completely different. And learning to validate the trauma that I had was life altering to me. And so I help people to validate that in their lives. And so after this response came, I'm like, okay, now I need to try and get people to read the book, on purpose. I didn't do a book launch or any such thing like that with my first book, but still it became a bestseller. So how that happened, God only knows. So, but after that, then I have written more books. I was offered a chance to speak at an organization before I released my book, Because You Matter. And I literally backed up and said no. Literally backed up. I mean, backed away from the woman. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. And now I love to speak. I think that fear was still unhealed trauma because multiple kinds of my trauma happened in front of a crowd. I was publicly shamed and humiliated in front of the entire church and in front of the entire school. I mean, in front of the entire neighborhood, multiple times of public shaming. So that's quite a testament to the love of God that I love standing in front of people and speaking. I much rather do it in person than on the computer online because I feed off of the energy in the room and I love to get people involved when it's appropriate. I do workshops and I'd like to do the workshops because we have questions and answers and we can go deeper and I can serve the people who are actually showing up. So then I became a coach in there also. So it was kind of just evolved how you had said you wrote your book and then it went into this and then it went into this and then it went. And that's kind of what it's done with me, one thing at a time, because we grow little by little.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So I'm just going to make a blanket generalization here. All authors are the same. We're like cut from the same cloth, right? Like we spend all these months or years or whatever writing a book, and then is anybody going to read this? I hope nobody reads this. Why did I write this? Oh bad. Do I press the button? Like we all think we're all the same, right? I love that. And we have so many synergies in common. So, growing up, speaking for me, that was my all-time biggest fear. And it started with a trauma in school of not feeling like I was smart. So, I also had some childhood trauma and home trauma as well, right? With my father who was abusive.
Mhm.
And I grew up with a severe lack of confidence, not feeling like I was good enough. I would have laughed at the word self-love at one point in time, thinking
I get that.
it was cynical, right? Um, but my trauma from speaking stemmed from that. And then, in a group setting at school, if we had to, how you sit around in a circle and everybody reads a sentence out of a book and then it's the next person and the next person goes, I was always so worried that I was going to mess up and be called stupid or be laughed at that I would only read my line.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wouldn't take in the rest of the book because I was so focused on not messing up.
Mm-hmm.
That led to the overarch, which was then perfectionism and all sorts of different things, being a super high achiever, proving myself,
Mm-hmm.
doing outrageously like moon rocket things. And if I didn't do it, I would think, oh, it's not enough. The thing about that is I realized that was also a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And that, 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, I would say, great, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And it was never enough. It was like a high. I was always chasing that that validation.
There's a word for that,
What's the word?
trauma drive.
Ooh, trauma drive. Sounds like the next train we're getting on. I love that.
Oh, we don't need to get on it. We've gotten off of it.
Yes, that's right. It wasn't easy because, I want to back up, for those who have gone through trauma in their life. I have a saying. I own a branding and marketing agency, right? And I tell this to people all the time. We can't see the holes in our own ship.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning there's just things an outside perspective will be able to see straight up, straight away that you can't see because you're in it. I think that makes sense. So we apply that same logic that I just said in business or in branding now to yourself as a person. And if you've gone through trauma, you might not even be able to spot it because you were in it, right? So, can you talk
Mhm.
to us a little bit about that? Because you said, "Hey, I was in a meeting with my therapist and they said, 'Hey, that was trauma.'" And you were like, "That was trauma?" So I want to go into that moment when you realized that you actually had some trauma that you didn't even know was there. Can
Mhm.
you talk about that?
That was childhood emotional neglect is what it's called. And she didn't know the term. When I learned the term, I contacted her and asked her, "Had you ever heard of that?" And she had not, which delights me because you don't have to know the terminology to heal from things. Just like you healed from trauma drive without knowing the term trauma drive.
Yeah.
I mean, the terms are useful after the fact to help you understand, but I'm a simplifier with what I do. I don't generally use all those fancy terms and industry jargon because they confuse people and they like, what are you talking about? Attunement and, dysregulation and all those big words. It's like, no, I felt like crap. I couldn't control my emotions. It's like I couldn't stop trying to achieve. I mean, we understand those much better. And all I knew with her was I felt unloved and unwanted in my family. I felt like I did not belong in my family. And she said, "Why?" I said, "I don't know." And that's when she said, "Something went terribly wrong. When a child is growing up, they're supposed to feel loved and nurtured by their family and feel like a sense of belonging in the family." I'm like, "That's like a thing?" I didn't know it was a thing. That's why many people chase after belonging and not feeling good enough and things because they have a form of childhood emotional neglect, because childhood emotional neglect is a trauma that you can't see. Physical trauma is something people can see. Emotional trauma is something people cannot see. What you see is you see the side effects. That's why my assessment that I offer is a way to identify how many of these side effects are manifesting in your life. That's how you identify, do I have trauma actively at work in my life, is through the side effects. But the childhood emotional neglect, that's you didn't get what you needed. It's like our emotional capacity, we have a bucket of emotional skills that we're supposed to receive as we're growing up, but mine was empty. So there was nothing in there. Go to get an emotional skill, there's no such thing in there. I didn't know what my emotions were. I didn't know the names for them except for, basic ones, and those were shamed, because being angry was a sin. And, pride was a sin, and loving yourself was a sin. I mean, everything was a sin. I felt like everything I did was a sin. And it was like, I just felt like, a bodified sin, that's all I was. So we need to get rid of us. So when I came into or back into things of faith, and then I'm hearing all about how we need to die to ourselves and it's not me living anymore, it's just God. It's like, well, here I need to eradicate myself again. And so that sent me down a whole nother kind of trauma of religious trauma, because I had spiritual trauma as a child with being publicly rejected in front of the entire church. So, but the emotional trauma, as I said, you can't see it. Whereas physical, like if someone was, you know, raped or beaten or something like that, they have a physical thing that you can see. Whereas emotional trauma, you can't see that with your eyeballs. And I've read articles and such from people who are therapists about one in particular, a gentleman who had a lot of emotional trauma, but then had a little bit of physical trauma. And he said he was so glad for the physical trauma because it was something he could look at and it helped him validate it. Because the emotional trauma is so hard to validate because you can't see it with your eyeballs. People shame you for it. Why don't you just get over it? You're making a big deal out of nothing. Just suck it up. Get over it. Just stop feeling that way. You're being oversensitive. You're over dramatizing and all the things because they can't deal with what you're dealing with. And it's not theirs to deal with, but they throw you away because you're not what they want or expect. So
Mm.
she she helped me see that with especially the emotional neglect. The other things I knew were there. I couldn't control my emotions. And she validated the things like the multiple deaths I had going on when I was growing up, the bullying that took place, the public shamings and things like that um, to just validate, yeah, that was a thing. And how are you responding now? Like backing up when that one lady asked me to speak. I'm like, no, because I forgot the words to a song in front of the entire school in sixth grade. And oh my goodness, my entire sixth grade class just ganged up on me afterwards and shamed me. And my music teacher convinced me to, do the recital in the evening again. I'm like, no, I'm just made an absolute fool of myself. And I'd done many solos before that. So why I suddenly forgot all the words, I have no idea. Not one word. I just stood there the whole time. How embarrassing. But because of the authoritarian oppression in my life, when he said I needed to do that, I pushed back, but then I caved because he's the one with the power and I'm this, little kid that has no power. So when I went to do the recital thing in the evening, the mother of one of the kids in my class, in my sixth grade class, was sitting on the front row, laughing at me and pointing at me and mocking me while I was on stage.
Wow. So, ugh, it's heart-wrenching to hear as you're saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 9-year-old daughter. I can only imagine, right? So, I'm sure everybody's curious and they may be relating to, some or parts of all of your or my story, and they're wondering to themselves, so did I go through trauma? I would love to know, we talked about some of the symptoms, but I would love to know what are some other symptoms that you can think of, ways this is kind of manifesting. One of the things I'm immediately thinking of is, when you said that somebody approached you for a speaking opportunity and you backed away, I'm thinking that, but also it could be job opportunities, promotional opportunities, partnership opportunities, or even clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having the confidence to approach a client. What do
Yeah.
you think? What are some of the other manifestations of this?
Well, fear, like that one. Passive aggressive is one of the ways. There's different styles of what's called attachment, which is how you relate to people, because we need to grow up with a healthy attachment where we feel loved and we have value and we interact with people, and we know how to fight with each other, we know how to disagree and continue going forward and get love but still stand up for ourselves. That's a healthy kind of thing. But there's the avoidant one where it's like, you can just stay over there and I'll stay over here, you stay on your side of the playground, I'll stay on mine, and we'll all be good. That's another one. Another one is the anxious where they're just people pleasing, and
Yeah.
they go from boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend, or girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend, because they cannot be alone. And then there's the combination of those two where they seem a little psycho, which is the one that I had, where it's like, oh, I need you, go away, go away. Oh, I need you, go away, go away. You're like, oh my goodness, are you psychotic? Kind of thing. Because you have that anxiety, but you in that need, but you have that space you need to avoid to push them away, and you can't land in one or the other. You just vacillate from one to another. And in my assessment, there's 30 questions in the assessment. So there's 30 different ways in the assessment to identify how. So you can look at them and see how many do you have. Do you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30? I had all 30 at one time. And when I do speaking, I share that. But when it's a workshop that we go through the assessment before I go into it with them, tell them, if you feel bad about it, I'm going to tell you, I had all 30 of them and now I don't. So there's hope.
Yeah.
There's hope. And another way to identify, I love how you mentioned you have a 9-year-old daughter. The first time I experienced this, I'm like, oh, I need to remember this to help people to identify it in their own life. I was, my first trauma that I remember, I was in first grade. I was 6 years old. And when one of my granddaughters was 6, I imagined her going through that circumstance, and it
Oh,
brought me to tears. It's like a little clue. So if you have something that happened to you when you were 9, do you have a daughter, a son, a niece, a nephew, a neighbor, some child that you know and care about? Imagine them going through that experience, and how do you feel about that?
That's powerful.
Do you want to go beat that person up because they're hurting your loved person? Well,
Yeah,
that's kind of like a little clue.
that's a huge clue, right? It's
Because
huge.
we're like, oh, I should have been stronger. Oh, I shouldn't have this. I shouldn't have that. Oh, why did it get so upset? Oh, that was a common thing back then. I don't care if it was common. That doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I didn't get rid of that trauma until I was in my 50s. I mean, that's a long time to carry that trauma. I knew it happened. I diminished it, pushed it aside. You have to just get over it. But what happened is my first grade teacher called me out on something. She had told us to not talk, and I dropped my pencil. And so I asked the kid for my pencil underneath their desk. And so I got in trouble for talking, and I got sent out in the hallway, which was bad enough when you're six. The ceiling's like 3 miles up, you know. But she brought me in and put tape over my mouth and required me to read in reading circle with tape over my mouth. And never told a soul until I was an adult, but I disassociated because I don't remember anything after she made me do that. I still don't remember that.
Wow.
But a few years back, when I used to live in Arizona and God was taking me through my healing process before I wrote the book, he gifted me with being able to sing on stage on the worship team at a church I was going to. And how he did it, it was so cool. The stories in my book, Emerging with Wings. And he just played right into where I was, which is so kind of him. God is so kind. And during practice with one of our, worship practices, there was a guy, he was videotaping because, they were putting it on TV and stuff. So he was videotaping, but I don't stand still when I worship. I can't stand still. I can't stand still watching TV too long. My husband loves TV. I can only handle it so long. I got to be moving. So I move and I like dance and sway when I'm worshiping. And so he teasingly came down and taped my feet to the stage. And it was in fun. It was it was not cruel or mean or malicious at all. I just associated at the moment. I mean, didn't even know it. My whole countenance changed. Everyone on the team was looking at me like, what is going on over there? They could see visibly I was having a reaction, and I responded to it differently than I ever had before, because Lord had been taking me through a process already. And I did go to the bathroom and cry like I'd done many times before. But one of the people on the team came and prayed with me, though it was clear to me they didn't really understand what was going on. I mean, you're being really kind, but that's not what's happening. And in the past, I would have left. I would have grabbed my stuff and peace, I'm out, I'm going home. I did not. Instead, I did something different. I went back into the sanctuary, and the worship leader, who was also so kind, he said, do you want to not be on worship today? No judgment, no shame. You don't have to do that today. I said, no, I'm going to do it. And I knew there were two songs that were going to trigger me. There were two songs we were going to be doing that were going to trigger me. And I leaned into my faith and into the God had been bringing me through the healing, and went through it, and it went well. And I didn't have a problem during worship. But when I got home from church that day, I sat down in my rocking chair in my office room and I said, God, I'm not getting out of this chair until you fix this. And he did. And I tell about that in my book, Emerging with Wings, of how he took me through that, showed me to see what the problem was, expose what caused it, loved me through the thing, and gave me action to get me free from it. That's my self process. See, expose, love, and free. And he had to teach me later that's what that process was. He took me through that and showed me that and brought me into freedom. I call it a silver bullet, is what he taught me how to create. And I don't have that at all anymore.
I love that. So powerful, right? We have so many synergies. It's incredible. As I'm listening to your story, it's a reflection of my own in so many ways. Since we're both faith-based, and I believe a lot of the listeners are as well, this is a good reminder that no matter what you've been through in your life, no matter where you are right now, what matters is that you matter. And that's it, right?
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
past can't be changed, and it's all for the good, right? Everything that we went through in life is setting us up to be the person that God designed us to be, to help other people. Even if that came from a place of pain, it's about how to transform that pain and turn it into a purpose to serve
Mhm.
others. And you can only serve others fully if you've experienced and walked in the same shoes they have. So
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah.
I
Well, you
just
need to do that with intention, though. It doesn't, I just want to pause here because I guess I stumbled over it myself. So maybe someone listening is stumbling over it. That, okay, all of that was for good. How can you say that was for good? It was awful. It was terrible. Well, all by itself, it's not. But God can work it for good. If we will take it and give it to Him, like a child brings a broken toy to their parent. Will you fix this? I don't know what to do with this. Will you take this and make it useful? That's how it becomes something powerful when we give it to the one who can weave it into a masterpiece.
I love that. It's beautiful. And, this occurred to me as well, that the opponent doesn't attack anything that is not a threat. So if you feel in your life that you're being attacked, maybe it's even from all sides, consider it a good thing that you must have something very big coming, a miracle, a lot of impact. You're going to change a lot of lives. You're going to do big things. So I hope everybody that is listening to this is really encouraged to know that, again, no matter what they've been through in life, they can absolutely live confidently, purposefully, and in a path of their divine confidence because they were made in the image of God. And that means a lot.
Yeah.
I love that.
When they,
Danielle, where can everybody find you?
on my website, daniellebernock.com, it's DanielleBernock.com. Many people misspell it, so that's why I always spell it out. Can I say one more thing to add to what you were saying? Another one of those single word things that can be really helpful to just make a minor shift. If you feel like the opponent is attacking you on all sides, instead of why me, what's wrong with me, what's happening, instead of be curious, what is he after?
Yes.
What is it that I have that he's trying to steal? A different kind of curiosity. That was a shift that I was gifted by someone because going through trauma, you could say, God, where were you? Where were you? And you feel like he was never there. I had a business mentor a few years back, and she brought that in with ask the Lord where he was. He was there, but ask him where he was with the expectation, knowing he was there. And I did that with my bullseye trauma. And at the appropriate time, he showed me exactly where he was, my one and only vision I've had that my husband witnessed me having. So I feel validated, didn't make it up, of where he was at that time. And it was life altering when we will be curious and we will take our heart to the Lord and say, Lord, what is going on here? Show me the way.
Mm, I love that. So beautiful. Well, Danielle, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest on this show. Really transformative for everybody who tuned in today to listen to this. And thank you for all of the listeners and subscribers of Grasp Confidence Podcast. We couldn't do this without you, but I need your help. Stats show that about 60 to 70% of people that tune into the show aren't subscribed on YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can catch all of these episodes as video recordings in addition to listening to them on your favorite podcast streaming platform. And by the way, don't forget to leave a review. I read each and every one and I'm so grateful for all of them. Thank you guys. We will see you on the next episode. Take care.